The worst thing about betrayal isn't the lie itself. It's how easily you let it into your life. You literally offer it your hand, smile, and hang up its coat in the closet. I was the one who gave her that damned key, not because I had to, but because it seemed, well, natural? Sarah and I had been friends forever, since college, when we shared a tiny shoebox of an apartment in Pennsylvania and split a single box of mac and cheese. So when Mark and I finally bought that house in the suburbs, the typical kind with a porch and a lawn that always needs mowing, Sarah was the first to get a spare key. I remember that day. We were standing in the kitchen that still smelled of fresh paint and cardboard boxes. I handed her that shiny piece of metal with the cat paw keychain and said something like, "Now it's your home too. Come by whenever." God, what a fool I feel like now. Mark even put his arm around my shoulders then, smiled at her, and added that now Sarah wouldn't have to wait on the porch if we got stuck in traffic after work. We were like one little weird family. Mark worked in IT, I shuffled papers at the insurance company, and Sarah, she was just always there. She'd come over to feed our retriever when we went to my parents in Maryland for the weekend, collect the mail, sometimes even leave a lasagna in the fridge if she knew I'd had a tough week. It was so convenient, so right. You don't expect a stab in the back from someone who knows what you look like with a terrible case of strep throat or which drawer holds the spare batteries. We trusted her with everything: the alarm codes, our secrets, our vacation plans. Mark often joked that Sarah was our third leg, the one we couldn't stand straight without. And I laughed. I was so sure of my marriage, my friendship, that perfect little world we'd built. I'd watch them laughing and chatting in the backyard during a barbecue and think how lucky I was. I had a husband who loved me and a best friend who always had my back. I opened all the doors for them myself. I created the perfect conditions for them to comfortably destroy my life right under my nose while I was busy picking out new curtains for the living room. The change didn't start with a loud explosion, but with some barely noticeable draft. As if the walls in a house that was always warm suddenly started getting cold. I didn't understand what was happening at first. I just caught myself thinking at some point that Mark knew about Sarah's weekend plans before I did. She used to call me to complain about a Tinder date or her idiot boss. But suddenly, silence. And then, during dinner one evening, Mark casually drops, "Oh, by the way, Sarah decided not to buy that car she was talking about." And I'm just sitting there with a fork in my hand thinking, "Oh? And when did she tell you that?" And he just shrugs like, she stopped by during the day to pick up some book of hers. We crossed paths for 5 minutes. And these 5 minute encounters kept multiplying. I started noticing that Mark became different. Not rude, no. On the contrary, he became oddly attentive when I had to be away. He used to grumble if I had to go to a conference in another state or stay late at the office for a quarterly report. Now he'd just say, "Don't worry, honey, do your thing. Sarah said she'd drop by. She'll help me with dinner." And it sounded so caring, so mature. And inside me, this sticky feeling would start stirring. Not jealousy, no, I chased that thought away like it was dirt. I thought it was just fatigue or paranoia. I mean, come on, it's Mark, it's Sarah. But then came details that couldn't be brushed off as fatigue. One day I came home and noticed Mark had changed his cologne. That heavy, woody scent I had given him for our anniversary was suddenly replaced by something citrusy, fresh. I remember Sarah once mentioning that she hated old man perfumes and loved the smell of bergamot. I had laughed about it back then, and Mark was standing right there, listening intently. Or this instance. I walk into the kitchen, and they're sitting there laughing at some joke, and the moment I enter, the laughter cuts off. Not as if they were talking about something bad, but as if I was a guest in their little closed club. Mark immediately starts bustling around, asking about my day, and Sarah jumps up saying she has to run. And that strange electric charge lingers in the air. She walks past me, touches my shoulder, and I smell the same citrus scent on her. That night, I couldn't sleep for a long time. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to Mark's steady breathing beside me, and felt like a complete fool. I had seen how he looked at her when he thought I wasn't watching. It wasn't the look for a family friend. It was a look at something forbidden. But I kept quiet. I was afraid that if I opened my mouth and voiced my suspicions, this entire perfect picture of my life would shatter into dust. And I just closed my eyes, hoping tomorrow everything would go back to normal. They say intuition is just the brain's ability to connect small facts that you consciously try to ignore. And at some point, there are so many of these facts that they start to suffocate you. My paranoia turned into this insane game of detective in my own home. I started noticing things a normal person wouldn't even register, like the position of the decorative pillows on the sofa. I always arranged them symmetrically, but then I'd come back and one would be dented, as if someone had sat on it for a long time, snuggled up. Or the wine level in a bottle. I distinctly remembered there were 2 fingers worth left, but by evening the bottle was in the trash and a new one was open. The scariest part wasn't that they might be doing something, but how they started taking over. It was a quiet invasion. One day I was looking for my favorite headphones and found them not in the nightstand, but on the coffee table, next to a mug Mark had been drinking from, and on the ear pad, a barely noticeable smudge of foundation. My skin is clear, I hardly ever use it, but Sarah? She always wore that thick layer to cover her freckles. I stood there with those headphones in my hands, literally shaking. It's such a small thing, So stupid. But in that stupidity was such audacity. She wasn't just in my house, she was using my things. She was trying on my life while I was at work. I started asking questions. Carefully. Indirectly. I asked Mark if Sarah had come by today. He said, no, so quickly that I knew immediately he was lying. A vein in his neck always twitches when he lies. I know that from 10 years of marriage. I said it smelled like her perfume, and he just laughed, saying my sense of smell must have gotten sharper from work stress. He came over, hugged me, kissed the top of my head, and I felt sick. He smelled of that damned bergamot and something else, something like smug alien satisfaction. And then there was the coffee incident. I had a meeting downtown, but the client canceled at the last minute. I decided not to call Mark, thought I'd surprise him, buy some donuts from that coffee shop he loves. I pull up to the house. Sarah's car isn't in the driveway. Well, I think, thank God, maybe we'll have some time alone. I walk in. The house is quiet. But the coffee machine on the kitchen counter is still on. 2 cups are on the table, one with black coffee residue, that's how Mark drinks it, the other with thick milk foam and cinnamon. I don't drink coffee with cinnamon. I can't stand it. It gives me heartburn. Sarah adores it. I touched the cup. It was still warm, still hot even. I froze, listening. The house was empty, just the hum of the refrigerator. I went upstairs, checked the bedroom. The bed was made, everything tidy. I looked out the window and saw the back gate leading to the wooded strip behind our property was slightly ajar. Did they just go for a walk back there? Or did she hear my car and bolt out the back? In that moment, I didn't feel like the mistress of the house, but like some ghost getting in the way of living people enjoying their lives. I poured that coffee down the sink, washed the cup, and just left the house. I wandered around the mall for 3 hours, staring at shop windows but not seeing anything. Only one thought kept spinning in my head. She opens my door with my own key when I'm not here. She drinks from my cups. She laughs within my walls. And the most terrifying thing? Mark lets her. He's not just an accomplice, he's the guardian of their little dirty secret. The resolution came on the most ordinary Tuesday. In movies, it always happens in the rain or with some kind of special effects. But in life, it's all much more prosaic. I just forgot my phone. The usual morning rush. I pecked Mark on the cheek. He was still in his robe making coffee. I wished him a good day and left. Just as I was exiting our neighborhood, I realized I'd left my phone charging in the bedroom, and all my contacts for an important 10 a.m. call were on it. I turned around. A maximum of 10, maybe 12 minutes had passed. When I pulled up to the house, the garage was closed. Everything looked perfectly peaceful. I quietly opened the front door, a habit. I didn't want to make noise in case Mark was, say, in the shower or on a work call. I walk into the hallway, and the first thing I see, on the console table under the mirror, lies that very cat paw keychain, that very key. Next to it was her bag, that big leather one I helped her pick out at a sale last year. The house was filled with a heavy, sticky silence. You know, when you can feel with your skin that something is off in the space? I walked further down the hallway. From our bedroom upstairs came the sound of laughter, a short, muffled, intimate kind of laugh that only happens between two people who are sure no one can hear them. My heart didn't start beating faster, it just stopped, dropped somewhere into my stomach, and turned into an ice-cold stone. I walked up the stairs slowly, as if in slow motion, step by step. On the hallway carpet upstairs, I saw her cardigan, that mustard-colored one she was wearing yesterday. It was just lying on the floor, discarded in a hurry. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, just a crack, a couple of inches. I didn't kick the door down. I didn't scream. I just pushed it open with my hand and froze on the threshold. Everything was so ordinary. Light from the window fell on our bed. They hadn't even drawn the curtains. Mark was sitting on the edge, half-dressed, whispering something in Sarah's ear, and she was lying on my side of the bed, on my pillow, in my favorite silk pajamas that I bought a week ago and hadn't even worn yet. She just took them from the drawer. In the second they noticed me, time seemed to freeze. Sarah's face, it didn't become frightened. Rather, it showed a strange irritation, as if I'd interrupted them at the most interesting part. And Mark, he just turned pale, became the color of that very wall we painted together last month. No one said anything. The silence was simply deafening. Mark started frantically looking for his pants, muttering something about, "It's not what you think. We were just talking. Things got out of hand." The most pathetic, cliched phrases in the world. And Sarah just sat up, adjusted the strap of my pajama top on her shoulder, and looked straight at me. There wasn't a hint of remorse in her eyes, only a cold challenge. She knew that key in the hallway was her pass into my life, and she had used it to the fullest. I didn't listen to their explanations. I just turned around, went downstairs, picked up that damn cat paw key, and walked out onto the porch. The air was so fresh, but inside me, everything had just burned out. I stood there, looking at our manicured lawn, while hell broke loose behind me in the house. Shouts, slamming doors, and the sounds of a life shattering. A week later, I called a locksmith to change the locks. It was a Saturday, one of those typical sunny mornings where all the neighbors are mowing their lawns or washing their cars. The locksmith, a very young guy, was whistling some tune as he pried the old cylinder out of my front door. He had no idea that for me, the clanking of metal sounded like a gunshot, putting a period at the end of 10 years of my life. Mark had moved out by then. Well, moved out. He took his sneakers, laptop, and some clothes, leaving behind a terrible emptiness and a pile of unpaid bills on the kitchen island. He tried calling, sent long messages about it being an emotional overload, that he lost his bearings, but he never mentioned the main thing, how long they had been turning my house into their stage set. And Sarah simply vanished. No call, no sorry, nothing. As if she had never been in my life at all, except for that mustard cardigan, which I just burned in the leaf barrel in the backyard. You know what's the strangest thing about it? The the most painful part isn't that Mark slept with another woman. It's that the woman was her. Every time I pick up a cup, I wonder, did she drink from it? When I go to bed, I feel the cold on the side where she lay in my pajamas. It's as if my house was defiled, as if they marked their territory. I even sold that damn dresser she took my clothes from. I just couldn't look at it. I remember when the locksmith finished the job and handed me the set of new keys. 5 of them. Shiny, heavy, cold. He asked if I needed duplicates made for anyone else. I looked at those keys and felt a lump rising in my throat. No, I said, for no one else. Now the house is quiet. A different kind of quiet. It's not the cozy silence from before, but a kind of ringing silence, like in a museum after closing. I walk through the rooms, and I feel like I'm learning to walk all over again. Sometimes I catch myself wanting to call Sarah to tell her what a mess Mark is making of the divorce, and then I remember she's the one who started it all. It's like phantom limb pain. You reach for support from the very person who destroyed you. People say time heals, that I'll find someone better, that locks are just pieces of metal. They're probably right. But in the evenings, when I lock the door with all the bolts and check the kitchen window, I still hear that muffled laughter from the bedroom in my head. Now I have new keys, a new alarm system, and a completely new life where I'm on my own. And you know what the saddest part is? I still keep that old cat paw keychain. I don't know why. Probably as a reminder that the highest degree of trust sometimes comes at the highest price.